China's stance on religion is nothing short of complicated. Kind of like that one friend who swears they don't care about something, but then turns out to be secretly obsessed. On the surface, China presents itself as a secular modern society, where religion is something people practice privately, with very little interference. But dig just a bit deeper, and it becomes clear that the government's control over religion is far more intense than most people realize. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, views religion with a mixture of suspicion, control, and outright hostility when it doesn't fall in line with their political agenda. Let's rewind a little. Ever since the CCP took power in 1949, their position on religion has been one of conflict. Mao Zedong, the founding father of the People's Republic of China, introduced policies that aimed to secularize Chinese society, all in the name of communist ideology. For Mao, religion was not just a distraction, it was a direct threat to the party's power. To him, religion wasn't a personal belief system, it was an ideological tool that could challenge the unity of the people. He famously described religion as the opium of the masses, a metaphor that suggested it dulls people's minds, making them easier to control. Mao's vision was simple. China needed to be unified under a single ideology, the Communist parties, of course. That meant pushing aside anything that could divide the people. Religion, with its competing loyalties to God, tradition, and spiritual leaders, was seen as divisive. This led to the large-scale suppression of religious practices, especially during the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, a time when temples were destroyed, monks and nuns were persecuted, and religious practices were viewed as signs of backwardness. For a whole decade, worship was considered criminal, and being caught practicing religion could land you in serious trouble. Now here's where it gets interesting. After Mao's death and the end of the Cultural Revolution, China underwent some serious changes. The country opened up to the world in the late 70s, and the economy boomed. But despite this opening up in some areas, religious control remained tight. The CCP realized that they couldn't completely erase religion, but they could control it, monitor it, and, when necessary, shut it down if it posed a threat to their power. The party's logic goes like this. If a religion promotes values that could challenge the CCP's authority, it's a problem. So the government selectively supports certain religions, but only if they conform to state-run organizations. Think of it like an exclusive club where members are allowed to practice their faith, but only if they're following the party's rules. Take Christianity, for example. China has an estimated 67 million Christians, but most of them practice their faith in government-approved churches. The Chinese government controls these churches through organizations like the Three Self-Patriotic Movement, which ensures that sermons are in line with communist ideals. However, underground house churches that don't comply with these regulations are frequently shut down. Pastors can be arrested, and churchgoers might face harassment. The government isn't so much against Christianity itself, they're just against Christianity getting too popular, or worse, becoming a rival authority to the party. It's not just Christianity under the microscope. Islam and Tibetan Buddhism face similar levels of scrutiny. In Xinjiang, where the Uyghur Muslim population is concentrated, reports have emerged of mass detentions, surveillance, and forced re-education programs. According to the United Nations, over 1 million Uyghurs have been detained in these camps, with the Chinese government calling them vocational training centers aimed at combating extremism. Critics argue, though, that this is just a cover-up for an ongoing campaign to erase Uyghur identity and cultural practices. The CCP sees Islam as a potential threat because it could rally people around an idea or identity separate from the party, which is a big no-no in the communist playbook. Tibetan Buddhism faces similar suppression, especially in terms of its leadership. The Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhists, is viewed by the Chinese government as a political figure, not just a religious one. Beijing has stated that the Dalai Lama's influence is a direct challenge to China's authority in Tibet, and as such, the party controls the selection of religious leaders in Tibet. The government doesn't want any Tibetan Buddhist leader to become too powerful, particularly one who might challenge Beijing's grip on the region. Now, why does China care so much about all of this? Simple. It's all about control. The Chinese Communist Party isn't just interested in economic power or military strength, it's obsessed with maintaining a monopoly on ideology and power. Religion, with its deep historical roots and strong networks of believers, can be a powerful rival to state control. The CCP's fear is that religion might create alternative power structures that challenge their rule. And in the Chinese political system, the party is king. Nothing and no one should threaten that. But here's the thing. Despite all the crackdowns and surveillance, religion still exists in China. In fact, there's an estimated 300 million religious people in the country, despite the official narrative promoting atheism. And this isn't just limited to Christianity, Islam, and Tibetan Buddhism. There's also a growing interest in other religions, such as Buddhism, Taoism, and even newer spiritual movements. The party may control religious institutions, but the reality is that people's faiths are harder to control. The Chinese government also has a growing online surveillance system to monitor religious activity, using technology like facial recognition cameras and data mining to track people's movements and activities. If you're caught attending a religious gathering deemed illegal, you could face serious consequences, whether that's job loss, fines, or being placed on a government blacklist. And of course, there's the infamous social credit system, which tracks everything from your online behavior to your spending habits. Being flagged for illegal religious activities could make life very difficult in China, and that's something the government uses as a deterrent. What's fascinating, though, is that while the Chinese government fights hard to suppress religion, it's also allowing certain forms of it to thrive, under very strict conditions, of course. For example, Buddhist temples in places like Beijing have seen a resurgence in recent years, but these are highly regulated by the state. Religious groups that align with the CCP's interests, or that don't present a challenge to their authority, can flourish. Essentially, religion is allowed to exist as long as it doesn't rock the boat. So why does the Chinese government treat religion this way? The simple answer is that religion is seen as a direct challenge to the party's authority. The party wants its people's loyalty and devotion to the state, not to religious figures or deities. If religion isn't controlled, it could become a powerful force that competes with the Communist Party's monopoly on power. In the end, China's relationship with religion is less about faith and more about keeping a tight grip on power. For China, religion is something to be managed, tamed, controlled, and regulated. It's a part of life, but one that can never threaten the CCP's control. And while the party may be able to suppress religious expression in many ways, it can't entirely erase people's deep-rooted beliefs. In the long run, this tug-of-war between control and faith is something we'll likely continue to see play out in China's complex political landscape. In the grand balancing act that is China's stance on religion, the takeaway is this. It's not about faith, spirituality, or even ideology. It's about power. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't hate religion because it's religion. They hate what it represents, a competing loyalty, an alternative structure, a crack in their carefully constructed monopoly on control. For the CCP, religion is like a weed in the garden of their absolute authority. Manageable if trimmed, but dangerous if left unchecked. And while they've got an arsenal of tools to prune and suppress, the roots of faith run deep. Despite the crackdowns, surveillance, and micromanagement, religion in China isn't going anywhere. It's a quiet rebellion, a flickering flame that refuses to be extinguished. The party may win the battles, but the war between control and belief is far from over, leaving us to wonder just how long the CCP can keep playing God in a country that refuses to stop believing.